This week on Quality Digest Live, we examine the health of the U.S. manufacturing job market.
Plus, what does Deming's system of profound knowledge have to say about sustainability? Well, we'll find out when we come back.
Today's sponsor of Quality Digest Live is Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With an extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 27th, 2013. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. All right. Here's something for all you stats geeks out there.
That's right.
The number of students earning bachelor's degrees in statistical science has more than doubled during the last 5 years. This is according to Marie Davidian, president of the American Statistical Association. In fact, those students earning bachelor's in statistics hit 1,000 for the first time in 2012. Master's and doctorate degrees also maintain strong growth, which we can see in this slide here. So you can see that's the master's degrees are the red up on top. You can see those have maintained strong growth. And the bachelor's degree in blue, as you can see, have a big, strong uptick in the last few years. According to Davidian, most of this is driven by the promise of readily available and well-paying positions in the private and public sectors after graduation. In fact, a report by research firm McKinsey Global Institute predicts the United States will need up to 190,000 new professionals with analytical skills to help manage the big data movement. Competition by companies for statisticians in the U.S. is so fierce, according to Davidian, that many employers are unable to fill all the available positions. A recent Career Builder survey found that jobs tied to managing and interpreting big data were among the hot areas for hiring. So, if you are already an English, art history, or journalism major, I don't know, you might want to reconsider joining the exciting world of statistics.
Well, I was an English major, so.
And I was a journalism major, and we know how well those pay.
That's right. We were English and journalism majors. So
One word for you, son.
So you do the math. No,
statistics.
That's right. It's plastics. Well, you know, but it makes sense. I mean, certainly big data, as indicated, Davidian indicated, is not really not just a movement. It's a thing. It's a thing that's here. It's being used, and crunching big data doesn't just mean you're good with numbers. I mean, to really be able to interpret and draw important information about that, you need a statistical background. You really need to understand it.
Interestingly enough, I think, and we'll talk to AJ about this in a bit, this may actually, in a way, also kind of tie into something that we're going to be talking about with AJ Sweatt later in the show, which is what is happening to the manufacturing jobs.
The job market.
The job market. I think this ties in. Maybe AJ will agree or not, but we'll find out in a few minutes.
We'll get that in a few minutes. Right. Okay. Well, also in the news this week, the first ISO prize was recently awarded to Brazilian technical analyst Wilda Oliveira Giesbrecht. And Wilda, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Wilda works for Sabrai, a nonprofit organization that helps foster entrepreneur and innovation and entrepreneurship and improve the overall competitiveness of small businesses. Giesbrecht won the ISO prize for helping these organizations achieve better access to technical knowledge through the use of standards. As part of her prize, Giesbrecht is being awarded 20,000 Swiss francs, which she will use to help finance a project to spread the use of standards among small businesses worldwide. Now, the ISO prize was launched earlier this year to recognize individuals who promote the use and understanding of ISO standards. A unique aspect of the award is that those who work for the International Organization for Standardization or its member bodies or technical committees are not eligible. And Dirk, that last point's important to note. What ISO is saying here is they don't want people that are already kind of in their house winning this prize. That's not the purpose of the prize. The prize was devised to work with people that are unaffiliated with ISO, people like Hulda Olivia Giesbrecht, who are ambassadors for it, who have used standards in their day-to-day world because they work for them.
So standards developers, people on tag teams and so forth wouldn't be eligible.
Are not eligible for the ISO prize. They're looking for practitioners
who actually use standards
who use it and it makes sense. They're going to be the best ambassadors for this. They're going to be the ones that say, hey, this works for me. me within my organization because it works, not because I work for ISO and I'm going to be touting the ISO line.
Right.
So this is really interesting thing that they're doing, and it's a very good prize, and it's something that obviously 20,000 Swiss francs is a good amount of money to fund a project that really will implement standards a lot more throughout the industry and the world. So for more information on the ISO prize, check out the story link on this page right below the player page. In fact, all the pieces that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show, as always, are available right below our video player screen, right down there.
That's right. Okay, well, you know, the good news we often hear about how manufacturing is recovering. You know, we've run actually a lot of pieces on those ourselves. We get reports from various manufacturing industry organizations that manufacturing seems to be recovering. Well, our next guest doesn't necessarily buy it. In the column, just how healthy is the U.S. manufacturing job market, columnist A.J. Sweatt writes, quote, I believe there are two elements that trump all the fluctuating Institute for Supply Management and Purchasing Managers Index surveys. It's all about the jobs and the people who fill them. Everything else is hooey.
Hooey.
Hooey. That's right. So joining us right now is the hooey man himself, A.J. Sweatt. Good morning, A.J. Whoops, wait, we got to get some audio there for you. Hold on one second. All right, do we have you there,
As I was saying, I've been called worse.
The hooey man, the hooey man. Well, hey, let's jump right into it. All these rosy reports about manufacturing job growth are hooey. I mean, why do you say that?
Well, I say that because we're not seeing enough meaningful growth. Yes, there are green shoots of activity, although they're very sporadic. We'll see a few gains one month. We'll see losses the next. And while we're seeing some rosy reports, in the overall holistic health of the manufacturing job market, we're just not seeing the growth that we need to recover from 2008. And I'd argue since 2000.
Okay, well, is the implication of your story, or at least kind of what I got out of it, is you're drawing a distinction between manufacturing growth, let's say sales and so forth, and manufacturing jobs growth? Are you making a distinction there?
Absolutely. I think where we fall short is we're not looking at manufacturing holistically. For example, the fact that we look at manufacturing as an island, and it's not an island. For example, its effect on downstream jobs is significant. Some people estimate it as high as 3.5 or 4 jobs downstream that each manufacturing job influences or helps sustain or create. We also segregate manufacturing as a subset of the economy. And in the same way, it also influences so many other aspects of our economy. So yeah, I think we do get myopic about it. We look at industries and say, well, this one's growing, but overall, you know, we've gone from a high of just under 20 million jobs at manufacturing in 1980 to over 40% less than that today. And our growth since 2008, since 2000 has plummeted. So whatever small growth we're seeing really doesn't equate. So when I hear these positive stories, I think, yeah, you know, there's no greater pundit, or I shouldn't say pundit, but advocate for manufacturing than me. I mean, except for maybe you guys. And if you look at it though in the big picture, we're just not seeing a recovery.
Well, let's talk about the jobs a little bit here. I mean, you mentioned the figure that, you know, how many millions of jobs did you say in what was it?
40% down.
40% down. Okay. I think
if you look, right.
I think a lot of people would argue that that ship has kind of sailed. I mean, they would point to, look, part of the reason that manufacturing jobs are down is, number one, more and more automation. So we're not hiring people because we've got something that's more efficient than people to do certain types of jobs. And the other thing is, according to some accounts, there is a big deficit of skilled workers for certain types of manufacturing jobs that are slowly requiring a higher and higher skill set. So I'm just wondering, hasn't kind of the jobs thing failed? I mean, not failed, but hasn't that ship kind of sailed for manufacturing job growth? I mean, I don't think we'll ever get those people back.
Well, yeah, and never is a strong word. I'm not thinking that we're going to see everything switch over right away, but it's important to break the argument apart into manageable bites. For example, you mentioned automation. Where are the robots? Who's building the robots? I mean, I've seen the effect of automation on manufacturing, and it's significant. But you can't use automation to explain the plummeting from 16 million jobs in 2002 to 12 million, jobs today with little growth, and then look at the capital equipment market and see that it's not recovered. Capital equipment sales in this country are way, way down from their highs in 1998. And if we're seeing all the automation purchased in this country, where's the impact on the capital equipment markets? To say that the ship sailed, I think, covers what really happened here. It's not a jobs issue. Jobs are a subset or a result of sound policies. And ultimately, our lack of a national industrial policy that includes focusing on industries and job growth is what's needed, not a focus on automation's impact or whether the ship has sailed.
So what are you seeing as a solution? If there was a jobs policy, what would you want to see in that?
Well, certainly we have to look at the fact that we're the only industrialized nation of any significance without an industrial policy that includes trade, for example. The belief that our trade policies are anything more than an invisible hand that allow the jobs to have left in the first place really overlooks the core of the problem. A policy has to include protections, and I get accused of being a protectionist sometimes. Well, I'm guilty of that. I think any sound, not just policy, but in every aspect of our lives involves protecting things. We need defense. I'm not advocating, it's not protectionism. I'm absolutely against isolationism. But a policy that includes employment, it includes immigration, that includes trade, has to be formulated with end goals in mind, rather than just letting it fluctuate by the whims of markets.
What about skills training? I mean, a manufacturing institute report estimated something like 600,000 manufacturing jobs are unfilled because of a skills gap. And actually, this is something that we get from our particular audience, or a subset of our audience, is that they don't have the right people that they can hire to fill the positions that they want. And these are manufacturing jobs, but they're, I guess, much more technical jobs. We're thinking things like pharma or high tech. So how do you deal with that kind of issue?
Wow, that's a really good one. I think, of course, and I want to acknowledge the impact of automation on manufacturing is huge. And a lot of that transition to more automated systems and the management of those systems rather than hands-on manufacturing has resulted in a lag, if you will, of our ability to filter skilled people in those sets of abilities as opposed to a traditional, more manual set of abilities. But I think what also needs to be considered is what happened when the jobs began leaving in the 80s to go to low-cost countries. The human impact was that many young people had a talk with their parents in their dens or their dining rooms on an evening they will never forget, when the parent had to tell this child that the way of life that they were accustomed to was gone. So these kids watched their uncles and their aunts and their fathers and their friends' parents lose their jobs in manufacturing. And I think that it's something that we don't deal with enough, having a straight conversation amongst ourselves and with them to discuss what really happened and to help put in place things that we can do to help not only ensure that these things are protected that our economy and this portion of our economy, very important portion of our economy, is protected, but also discusses with them why it happened and to help build some trust there. It's difficult, in short, to get somebody that's been wronged, fool me once, that sort of thing. So I think that has to be part of the debate too, Dirk.
Okay. Well, AJ, I appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with us. If anybody's interested in reading that particular article, it's on below the player page. If you want to read more articles by AJ, actually, if you scroll into his bio, believe we link out to AJ's blog. A lot of really interesting things from AJ Sweatt. So, AJ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Call your representatives, everybody, and demand an industrial policy for this country.
There you go.
Good call. Thank you, AJ.
Thanks, AJ.
We'll be talking to you again soon, AJ. We want to continue this conversation with you going down the line.
Thanks, fellas, and thanks for all your good work.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you, too.
All right.
Here's AJ. Well, hey, he's bringing up good points. I mean, there's so much there. Gosh, one little 8-minute segment, it's hard to get everything. But there certainly is a lot. I like what he's saying about the linkage to the various things that we need to be doing in this country.
As usual, everything is all of these problems are very complex, and they involve a lot of aspects. I mean, you talk policy, you talk education, you talk automation. I mean, all of these things are so intertwined that there's no real simple solution. But I mean, he makes a good point. If you had some sort of comprehensive policy just let's wait for that to go through Congress.
Well, it can't hurt.
But that's another topic.
We'll get to it. Okay. Well, I want to turn to another good quick piece here that we ran this week, The Power of Visual Thinking by Matthew May, which appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And this article, as Matthew often writes about, is really about the value of vision in a literal sense. It's the ability to tell a story. It's the ability to rally the troops and provide a clear and captivating image in your message that people can then see and understand where you're going with it. May relates the story of a lady by the name of Carrie Morrison, who was a candidate for the executive directorship of the Hollywood Business Improvement District nearly 2 decades ago. For those of us in California, we know that at that point in the mid to late 90s, Hollywood, California was
wasn't glamorous.
Not at its height. It was what you could call kind of a decrepit, crime-ridden, I think, shadow of its former self, to be blunt. Morrison was a long-shot candidate to win the executive director position, so she had nothing to lose. In her interview with the board, she took the kind of unusual tactic, not of talking about herself and her qualifications, but about her experiences coming into Hollywood for the interview that day, how it felt to her, what she saw,
you got to read
what
the
those
article,
images conveyed. Read the article because Matthew does a nice job of conveying that himself. And so the members of the board, I think, were maybe a little too close to the reality of what Hollywood was really like to really see the situation as it really was. So her imagery, I think, vividly brought it home for them.
Right.
So what's the punchline? Of course, she got the job. And of course, she successfully undertook what was, I don't think it's unfair to say, a Herculean task to re-energize that community. And a big part of her success was being able to tap into her visual skills and communicate that vision to those around her, and that allowed them to see with fresh eyes what was going on. I think, Dirk, this is a key skill for any leader. Anywhere, whether you're working on within a community, whether you're working in a manufacturing environment, wherever it may be, whether you want to clean a community or straighten up a shop floor, you've got to have vision, but you can't just have vision. You got to communicate that vision and let people understand it. And one of the things that was interesting about this was the fact that the board, maybe were too close to the problem to really see it. So her fresh eyes allowed them to see it by the way that she expressed it.
Right, and actually, I think one of the takeaways that I took from this was that she came in from the outside and she just laid out what Hollywood looks like at that time when you drive into it. I mean, it was, decrepit is probably a kind word. And to the board's credit, they actually listened. I mean, it's hard to take criticism, but they, according to Matthew May's article, they listened to her and they put her into that position. So obviously they took what she said to heart, and she said about rectifying the situation. But that couldn't have happened unless somebody from the outside came in and kind of put the light before their eyes.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so let's put this in a perspective, into a context in which those of us or those of you out there will maybe understand. So you have a fouled up process in your shop floor, in your plant somewhere, and maybe you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too darn close to it. how do you get those fresh eyes when your managers, your team members on the floor have been seeing it and working with it for months or years? So what do you do with that? How does that happen, do you think, within an organization like that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's somebody from a different department. I don't know if it's a consultant that comes in, an internal auditor, an external auditor. I don't know, but
you need that other view. You need that other vision,
because you're never going to get where you want to go by looking at it the way you've been looking at it, right? If you keep asking the same question the way you've always asked, you're going to get the same answer. So I think that's what Matthew's talking about in this piece, is the value of stepping away from it and looking at it. And maybe you can do an exchange. Maybe within your operation, you in your particular department can look at somebody else's stuff and say, well, here's what I would recommend. Here's what we're doing. Maybe they can do the same for you. Maybe that works. I don't know.
Right.
It's an interesting article though, so check that one out.
Well, speaking of vision.
Speaking of vision, our next story addresses the man who, in my opinion, I think probably saw more clearly and earlier than anyone else the business case for the importance of profound knowledge within complex systems. And I'm talking, of course, about W. Edwards Deming. The Deming Institute carries on the work of the man, and their fall conference is coming up on the campus of Purdue University in Lafayette, Indiana next month. One of the speakers of the conference will be Andrew McKeon, Director of Operations for Market Environmental Registry. His topic is, I think, is a fascinating one. Disruptive sustainability. Really interesting. So, what does the Deming system of profound knowledge have to say about sustainability? Well, quite a lot, actually. And to find out more, we're going to be joined right now via Skype by Andrew McKeon. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yes, you wrote about sustainability.
I'm enjoying your talk before about Hollywood and this idea that a system can't transform itself, it has to be transformed from the outside. That's sort of one of the takeaways I got from what you were saying.
I think that's true, and again, it's all about vision, you know. I think that you need to be able to step away and look at it, and you're right. I mean, big systems are really hard to do that, and actually you wrote about it, I think, really, really well in your piece, that you know, you need to be able to have a profound knowledge of a system in order to communicate it and spread that strategically throughout an organization. And the topic that you chose, the framework you chose to talk about this was really interesting. You chose to look at it from a perspective of climate change, which I thought was fascinating. Why did you choose climate change? Why was climate change the entry point into that for you?
Well, it actually happened that a few years ago I got involved with something called the Climate Project, which was a not-for-profit organization that trained American citizens to learn about what climate change was really all about from the science, and then use that as an opportunity to share within the community these stories. And the more I learned about climate change and the science of it, the more you know, my learnings from Dr. Deming started coming up. And you know, so how profound knowledge applies to climate change, I think, is really very clear and actually quite interesting, because the four components are appreciation for a system, knowledge of variation, theory of knowledge, and human psychology. And if you look at each of those four components, there's a lot that can be elucidated about the problem of climate change by looking at it from those four perspectives. For example, appreciation for a system. I actually gave a talk at the United Nations about 5 years ago on this, and before I gave that talk, I started really thinking about this deeply. And what I came to the conclusion was that since the Industrial Revolution, we've really seen the Earth as a tool and a subsystem of the global economy, this powerful system now that we have, the global economy, and that in a way, from a sustainability standpoint, that's inside out. That the global economy is probably the most powerful subsystem of the Earth and the biosphere, but indeed it is a subsystem because it is completely dependent on that system, whereas the biosphere is not dependent on the global economy. So in terms of appreciation for a system, how do we then manage a global economy as a subsystem of the planet? And what does that mean in terms of alignment? And you know, clearly examples of new ways of getting energy that don't put 40 million year old carbon that's been sequestered in the ground and putting it up in the atmosphere. That's one example of how we use that systems thinking. Knowledge of variation, this is sort of really when it hit me, because if you understand what's happened to the climate over the last 2 million years, there's been much variation in the Earth's climate. There's been 7 great warmings and 7 great global ice ages. But the system was in what Deming would call, it was a stable system. There was an upper and lower control limit to both CO2 and temperature. And the causes of that variation were common causes. The causes had to do with the solar system, the tilt of the planet, the elliptical nature of the orbit around the Earth. So that system was creating that variation. Now we see where CO2 is going. It's way outside of the upper limit, and it's heading, instead of being between 180 and 280 parts per million, it's now at almost 400 parts per million. And basically, with a planet that's going to support 10 billion people by mid-century, if we do it with fossil fuels, it's going to be 1,200 parts per million of CO2. So we are now well outside of where we were over the last 2 million years of variation, and that has a lot of implications for the way the planet's going to look. So knowledge of variation, I actually didn't come to, it wasn't Deming to climate change, it was climate change to Deming for me, and seeing that graph and understanding about variation really brought it home that his knowledge and his ways of framing things were very important for this. Theory of knowledge. When people say to me, oh, climate change is just a theory, absolutely correct. Climate change is just a theory. All knowledge comes from theory. Gravity is a theory, evolution is a theory, relativity is a theory. But those theories helped create new knowledge that transformed, human society and the planet. And I think climate change, once it is accepted as a theory of great robustness that it is, I think we're going to see transformation there. But it is a theory, no doubt.
Well, Andrew,
and then finally, human psychology is the last component, and that's about, for me, the human psychology component of this is the inability for human beings to appreciate invisible, slow-moving problems. And this is an invisible, slow-moving problem, very hard to get people to really take it seriously. And also we have a preference for doing things the way we've done them, and there's also vested interest in doing things the way we've done them. So those four areas of profound knowledge, I think, were, for me, very helpful in understanding climate change, and it's
Well, let me ask you about sustainability for a minute. Just jump back on that. It's a buzzword today, but it's clear that leaders like Deming understood the importance of it, even if they didn't use that exact term back decades ago. So, what would Deming think about the focus on sustainability today? Would he consider it sloganeering, or is there something deeper to that?
Well, I think there is a danger that it's being used as sloganeering in many companies. I think sustainability is still seen as sort of the noble thing to do and sort of the right thing to do, rather than, the opportunistic thing to do, or even eventually the must do, because otherwise we'll be disrupted. But to your point about sloganeering, I think that the term has lost a lot of meaning for people, and it becomes a turnoff, and that's a problem. For me, it gets down to what does sustainability really mean from an authentic point of view, and ultimately it comes back to this idea of systems.
And Andrew, let's talk about psychology for a minute. I think that many times the human element in any systems change is both the greatest opportunity and the greatest bottleneck, really, for change. So how do you gain buy-in for profound knowledge when it can be somewhat abstract sometimes?
Well, I would say a couple of things. One is, let's look at some companies that are actually, in fierce global competition with their competitors, who, to me, are emulating this. And how are their people, how are their employees getting involved in this, and how does it affect them? And a number of companies, I mentioned a few of them in the article, but let me just reiterate: Interface Carpets, Novellus Aluminum, SC Johnson, Patagonia, Method, Zappos. These are companies, maybe some of them are not the sustainability sort of rock stars, but some of them are. Patagonia clearly is. Interface, to me, is an example of the transformation of a company that was totally devastating to the environment, but its leader said, you know what? We can't keep making carpet and destroying the planet. We've got to figure out a way. So their goal is by 2020, all their carpets will be restorative to the environment rather than destructive to it. And that leader, unfortunately, just passed away. The leader, Ray Anderson of Interface, passed away last year. But the people that worked for him, everyone in the company, was totally committed to this aim and vision because they saw it as authentic, important, and allowed them to be a part of something that was bigger than themselves. And to me, I met Ray Anderson and I asked him about Deming and whether Deming had influenced him. But the truth is, whether he was influenced by Deming or not, he was embodying these principles. And I think that's what I want most out of this conference at Purdue, is not so much that everyone knows a lot about Deming, but that there are examples of the embodiment of these ideas, whether they do or not.
And Andrew, in addition to what we just discussed here, what else will we be touching on at that event?
Well, actually, I really want to talk more about this idea of sustainability as a disruptive force. And if you're familiar with Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, which became the Bible of Silicon Valley about 15 years ago, he talked about a lot of the same things that Deming was talking about, which is that you can't just manage by the numbers. He shows successful companies that ended up going bankrupt because they did business as usual and they did what they should do as good managers. Deming used to say, we're destroyed by good management. We're destroyed by doing the right thing because we're not looking at disruption. And I think sustainability can be this disruptive opportunity for companies.
Well, Andrew, thanks. I think that's great. We're looking forward to hearing more about the conference. That's going to be, again, October 18th at Purdue University in Lafayette, Indiana. You can check out more and register for the conference if you want. Andrew's story is right below the player page down there. So, Andrew, we hope a lot of our viewers will come out and check that out. Thank you for joining us today and giving us a perspective on Deming and sustainability, and have a good time at the conference next month.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, good. Looking forward to that one. That should be fun.
It's interesting to climate change is always in the top, and particularly right now, with the latest report just came out too. So it's interesting to see somebody take something we've been around for a long time, Deming's system of profound knowledge, and kind of his spin on how to apply those ideas. Interesting
stuff. So check that out. Again, the conference is coming up in a few weeks, and you can register for it through Andrew's story right below the player page. Okay, well, that's our show for this week, but before we go, we'd like to thank today's sponsor. Hexagon Metrology is committed to helping you control your processes, enhance the quality of your products, and increase efficiencies. They empower you to stay one step ahead of a changing world with their wide range of product offerings, nearly 200 years of expertise, and an extensive support network. Hexagon Metrology, where quality comes together. For more information, just click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player.
That's right. Well, thank you once again, all of you, for joining us for this week's Quality Digest Live. It was interesting. Two great guests, Andrew McKeon and AJ Sweatt.
That's right. That's right. Thank you both for joining us.
An article from Matthew May. Get buy-in from the outside, or get a view from the outside of your process. So good show, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. And we'll see you all next week for another week of QDD and QDL next Friday. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you then.
So long.
Bye.
Thank you.